New movie in town, Gas. It involves Toronto comedian Howie Mandel, among others. Jeannie Beker on the entertainment scene.
Problem? Did he say problem?
There's a problem? You're out of gas.
Gas is the story of a gas shortage, but basically it has to do with lots of car chases and crashes. It was shot on location in Montreal, but it's supposed to be set in LA. And if all that sounds a little weird, meet Howie Mandel. He's the star of Gas. A local guy who once sold carpets, he's hit the big time in LA. And if you're wondering why Howie's in bed, well, that's where he wanted to be interviewed. I guess it makes him feel all the more comfortable.
Has your life taken on a real frenzied kind of quality now?
Oh yeah, I'm always out, you know, I'm never at home. I like to just get right out, and it must be like 5 o'clock right now. I like to spend my time in bed.
You mean?
I sleep.
First you're saying you get out, then you say you spend your time in bed. I won't ask any questions. Your wife could be listening. Oh, I see.
You should see before you woke me up where I was.
Next subject. No, is life in LA as crazy as everyone says it is?
Yeah, the people there are nuts. They are. I have a lot of problems there, you know. I went into a bank there to open up my first account, and they asked for my ID, and I gave my Toronto driver's license, so they said no, they needed something with a picture on it, so I took it back and I drew a little picture on it. You know? It's a nice little picture, a mountain, moon, little sun.
Do you think people appreciate you in LA? I mean, that's the place where you've sort of found your calling.
6 of them do. 6 do, and a few don't.
I guess that's all it takes in LA. If it's the right 6, you've got it made.
Yeah, I think it's the right 6.
Oh.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. No.
No? What's wrong? What's wrong?
My neck.
Your neck?
Yeah, definitely my neck. Oh.
Right here?
Oh,
Is it here?
It's worst. I can't.
Really?
Not really. You know. Listen, I'm sorry I didn't get your camera.
It's okay. It's insured.
It's insured. How about a lawyer?
How about a doctor?
Ah, how about dinner?
How about the guy who took my camera?
Come on, how about dinner? Huh?
How about giving me a call?
Howie says he's now ready for a serious acting career. He may have started out as a stand-up comic, but these days he's studying Shakespeare. In LA, of course. I'm Jeannie Beker on the entertainment scene for CityPulse.
I joined observers from Britain, France, Germany, and the United States at the Special Research Complex for Experimental Diving, located at Toronto's Canadian Forces Base, Downsview. We were about to witness Canada's first saturation research dive, in equipment that without water can simulate the working pressure on the ocean floor, the world's largest high-pressure experimental compression chamber. The 5 Canadians lined up, had their pictures taken by official armed forces personnel documenting the event, and then at 10:03, the aquanauts, all professional divers, entered the chamber that will be their home for the next 13 days, a new and dangerous world of high pressure. This is the Operations Control Center, where all of the equipment that's involved in this special dive is coordinated by the men behind me. Let's take a listen to the complexity of what has to go on here as they converse with the divers who are on the inside.
Okay, I repeat, and we have Van Eck on B1 and Campbell on B2. Is that affirmative?
That's correct.
Are you both ready?
Ready?
All right, go.
Go.
There is a special life support system, equipment to maintain the mix of pressure and gas. And while the control crews monitored and maintained communication, other technicians readied the pressure locks that all food, medical supplies, and equipment will have to pass through. A team also monitored their health by remote control, using equipment to reveal how the body reacts to the different levels of pressure and combination of gases. Just listen to the high-pitched female sound of the men's voices.
Which subject do we have?
It's not adding. It's above.
It's above, though. Say again, you're breaking up.
It's not adding.
I know.
Van Eck on
Van Eck on 2, is that affirmative?
on 1.
Under high pressure, normal air has an intoxicating effect on the aquanauts, so they breathe a lot of hydrogen that's mixed with oxygen. And just like breathing in hydrogen from a balloon, their voices go high. One of the team members is on the outside and will enter the chamber halfway through the week. He told me about a specific danger of the project that's already claimed 3 lives in U.S. testing. and resulted in the fiery death of Gus Grissom, one of the U.S. astronauts.
Any mixture over 6% oxygen has a capability of starting a fire. Oxygen needs its fuel source. There's a tremendous cleaning procedure goes through the chamber, but there's always that hazard, and as a result, there's safety factors built in.
Another danger, any leak in the chamber. Instant decompression would mean bubbles in the blood would expand to 16 times their normal size. The bodies would literally explode. But if we're to mine the ocean floor in the future, we'll need a more efficient way to get divers in and out of a high-pressure world. I'm Brian Hill for CityPulse.
That's 301.
First day of the judgment, they said we have to have a very early meeting, and some were even making some statement to the effect that Mr. Trudeau had to come back from Australia to deal with the problem right off the bat at that time. So Mr. Trudeau was willing to meet Mr. Bennett on the Friday, and they said it could not be. Saturday, it was the riding problem. Sunday was the family problem. Monday was the turkey problem. And so, you know, it's not Mr. Trudeau. As soon as he came, he was willing to meet with one or many of them.
Chretien also said that if the provinces can get their act together, Ottawa will be willing to compromise on some key issues.
In terms of the Bill of Rights, we say that, you know, yes, we'll accept some discussion and some improvement and some changes that make some sense. But the Canadians want a Bill of Rights. 85% of the Canadians would like to have a Bill of Rights entrenched in the Constitution.
Just when you thought the water was safe again. CityPulse took to Lake Ontario this morning, Port Credit to be exact, for the annual Ontario Steers Junior Regatta. 19 clubs took part in this, in the albacore doubles competition and also the laser competition. This is the top of the class in the doubles, the Treisman brothers from the Royal Canadian Yacht Club. In the laser competition, this is the best, Steve Tawasterna from Sturgeon Lake.
People can do.
Brian Halliday also has an interesting hobby, something to sidetrack his weightlifting. He's an art student, and when he stops lifting the 400-pound weights, he'll be lifting a 6-ounce brush for some painting. He also told me about his immediate goal to set a new Canadian record at the Games for the Physically Disabled next week in Toronto.
Ah, the beautiful game of lawn bowling. The pace is dignified, the players and fans alike resplendently dressed. Wait a second, let's start that again. Ah, lawn bowling. The ultimate in dignified splendor. Skillful athletes, mature connoisseurs of the sport. And yes, Rollen Stewart, known as Rock and Rollin, North America's most familiar sports fan. We've seen him at practically every major sports event. When Reggie Jackson homered in the World Series, Rock and Rollin was right behind home plate cheering. When Jack Nicklaus made a great shot in the Canadian Open last weekend, guess who was right there on the tee? Rock and Rollen Stewart. Last month, Rollen was in Washington imploring an end to the baseball strike, and today he was at the World's Lawn Bowling Championships in Willowdale. The guy sure gets around, but why?
Peter, I'm a born-again Christian. I go to all the televised events all over the world to give my Christian testimony. I believe that if you believe in Jesus Christ, you can be saved, and I want to portray that to the world.
Rock and rollin' has become such a familiar entity at the big sports events that his notoriety tends to precede him, making it easy to get that choice seat, the one that puts him on national television.
There's always people selling tickets, and the fans have an extra seat, and I'll buy a ticket out front, and then I'll go down and ask these people if I can sit with them. But lately, they've been coming up to me and saying, come on down, rock and rollin', and sit with me.
Because they want to be seen with you.
Right.
And how long will Rollen pursue his strange but exciting vocation?
Right up till the second coming, Peter.
Will that be before or after the Blue Jays win the World Series?
Before.
That figures. Take a piece.
All right, Blue Jays, come on, fly away. Second season, you know you got a chance to win this.
At Local 280, union leaders were still planning their strike strategy. Yesterday, 360 bartenders and waiters voted to reject their latest contract offer of a 7% wage increase for service bartenders and a 6% increase for waiters. Only 360 men voted for this contract. Does that suggest an apathetic union?
No. They were all upset. A lot of them didn't just show up because they were so upset of the offer.
My feeling was that they were very insulted. To give men 6%, this is after 16 months. They haven't had a raise in 16 months, and to offer them 6%, our people were almost hostile, as I said before.
Outside the Beverly Tavern, Jimmy the bartender was donning a new apron.
We're going to fight for the rights, to get more money like the way we work. Like, you see, everything goes up. Our wage is still the same.
But patrons may be more willing to switch than fight.
So I don't want no pictures.
So what are you going to do if you see people...
If they're with picket line, I won't go in.
You won't go in? Well, what will you do if you see picket lines? Will you go someplace else?
Not sure. Right next door to the place. There's a couple of block down further to the other one.
So you don't care if you see signs, you'll just go someplace else to drink?
That's right. They're non-union.
Inside the Beverly, owners Al and Stephanie Colin and their son Lawrence prepare to man the bars for as long as the strike lasts.
Well, I think it will affect us up to a point. I just don't know to what degree. I think like everybody else, we'll just have to wait and see after a few weeks. If it goes that long, then you would be able to assess it. Stephanie and Lawrence and I will be manning the fort as best we can for as many hours as we can.
One hotel has already broke ranks with the Toronto Hotel Association and offered its workers a 10% wage increase. The union says it will accept that offer and hopes other hotels will follow suit. If so, this strike could be short-lived. Barbara Laskin for CityPulse.
12-year-old Patricia Handy came home from the hospital for sick children last week. Her father, Osmond Handy, removed her from the hospital because he didn't think she was getting proper care. After a 3-week stay at the hospital, Patricia's injured left eye developed a serious infection, and doctors at the hospital have decided the eye must be removed before it affects the right eye. For the 50-year-old junk dealer and his wife, Bernice, the decision to give consent for the operation is not easy, especially in the wake of events following what appeared to be a minor accident a month ago.
This is the headgear with the brace, this portion of the brace.
Is this what hit her in the eye?
Yes, this is what hit her in the eye.
Bernice Handy took her daughter to the Sick Children's Hospital, where a nurse assessed the injury and asked her to wait her turn. According to Bernice, the nurse ignored her plea to relieve Patricia's pain. The hospital tells me Patricia received care after about 40 minutes, and that's not unusual on a busy weekend, according to the Director of Emergency Services.
But there was no indication on the initial examination by the nurse that her condition needed care then, as opposed to half an hour later. And the other kids who come in perhaps shocked in their meningitis need treatment now.
What about the infection in the eye? I understand that she developed that while during the stay here.
Contamination leads to infection, but the interval may take a long time.
So it's possible that he picked it up from home from the initial injury.
I would guess the likeliest thing are that the organisms got access to the eye when the foreign body got access to the eye.
Hospital officials naturally are disturbed about a 12-year-old child losing her left eye. Although they recognize it as a tragedy, they are convinced Patricia Handy received excellent medical treatment during her stay here. But her father, Osmond Handy, is not convinced. He has complained to the Ontario College of Physicians and Surgeons and the Provincial Minister of Health for further investigation. Jojo Chintoh at the Sick Kids Hospital for CityPulse.
It's pretty funny. You put the light on, you turn the camera on, and everybody disappears. Strange that film buffs should be this camera shy. But we're here at the top of the CN Tower for the closing party of the Festival of Festivals, and believe me, there are at least 1,000 people here. Jam-packed would aptly describe the scene at Saturday night's bash. The party, hosted by Sparkles and McGuinness Distillers, provided festival goers with the chance to boogie it up just one more time as the 1981 Toronto Film Extravaganza came to an end. These drag queens, who call themselves the Great Imposters, saw the party as a good excuse to get dressed up.
I came dressed sort of like Divine, sort of because Divine was in the festival with polyester and stuff. All I have on is the polyester boobies, you know. But I didn't wear anything else.
Enough, I guess.
Yeah, I thought that would be polyester enough.
What do you think of the scene here tonight? I mean, is this your kind of scene?
It's really
wonderful. It's just fabulous.
What do you think of the scene in Toronto in general? I mean, is this a pretty good town to get dressed up in and have a good time in?
Well, do I look like I'm dressed up? I mean, really.
But you don't wear this often, do you?
Oh no, only at the Festival of Festivals, you know.
I didn't find too many folks at the party who had attended many of the screenings, but then again, perhaps the films weren't the big attraction. What makes the festival? Is it the films then, or is it the parties? I guess it's the parties.
It's the parties. It's the business contacts that you get at the parties, before and after.
Do you think a lot of people are here hustling?
Yeah, I don't think they're really doing that actively, but that's just the nature of the business.
Although it was hard to find people sober enough to make good sense, this lady summed it up for the serious film goers.
It's been an incredible festival. I've enjoyed it all.
Have you been to other film festivals in the past?
Yes, quite a few of them.
How do you think this measures up?
It's been a marvelous festival. I'm really very, very excited about the way Toronto has put on a festival. It's very professional, very first-rate.
What is the film Chariots
of Fire.
That was the best. That's the best as far as I'm
concerned. Have you seen it?
Yep, I saw a lot of film clips of it.
You saw a lot of film clips, but you didn't see the film.
Yeah, but what I saw is incredible.
Everybody's such a reliable critic these days.
I'm trying real hard.
Now, it was difficult tracking down celebrities at this particular party, but I did manage to run into a couple of our favorites. Your credibility, Gord. What's going to happen to your credibility? Well, no, I want to ask you guys, what did you think of the festival? I've seen you at some of the parties.
Wonderful. I followed you everywhere.
I knew wherever Jeannie Becker was, there'd be a party.
Exactly. So we looked for Jeannie.
What about the films?
What about it?
Have you seen any?
Films?
Not a lot of them.
Were there films at this thing?
All in all, this year's festival did prove to be a smashing success, with or without the films. It was, in all truth, a festival of festivals, especially for all the partiers. I'm Jeannie Becker on the entertainment scene for City Pulse.
The fire at the Evangel Temple started very early in the morning and it spread very quickly. We have the fire story for you tonight from City Pulse's Barbara Laskin.
The first alarm rang at 7:40 a.m. Within 3 minutes, a phalanx of firefighting equipment was on the scene, including 9 pumpers, 6 13-cylinder trucks with extra air bottles, and a rescue squad. Already, an explosion of smoke stained the sky. Eventually, more than 75 firefighters were on hand. Acting Platoon Chief Holly Sutton said the fire had a good head start before his men arrived on the scene. Onlookers seemed amazed by it all, but Temple member Josh Maffey was shocked.
I'm heartsick, heartbroken. What can I say? I just don't believe it. It's impossible. I don't know.
Others were glad the temple was burning. It had become an albatross. Officials had been trying to sell it for years to get themselves out of debt that had hit $5 million.
Oh, I don't care. I don't care.
Even after 17 years of being the pastor here?
You see, I'm oriented to the fact of where God lives. He doesn't live in churches. He lives in people. The congregation voted to sell it years ago. This is what they've been wanting to do.
The fire started here along the northwest stairwell. As you can see, that's the remnants of a safe that was also located here. One fireman told me that among other suspicions, other causes, robbery is one motive that's being investigated. Firefighters battled flames and billowing smoke for 3 hours. Much of the exterior stained glass was lost, as well as the great central dome. From my standpoint, it looked like a huge cauldron of smoke. From another viewpoint, a strangely death-like scene against a foreground of leaves. It's been a long haul for this temple. Some of its congregants wanted it demolished. Others were vehemently opposed. It's 102 years old, and now it must really be feeling its age. Barbara Laskin for City Pulse.
The first day of the judgment, they said we have to have a very early meeting, and some were even making some statement to the effect that Mr. Trudeau had to come back from Australia to deal with the problem right off the bat at that time. So Mr. Trudeau was willing to meet Mr. Bennett on the Friday, and they said it could not be. Saturday, it was the riding problem. Sunday was the family problem. Monday was the turkey problem. And so, you know, it's not Mr. Trudeau. As soon as he came, he was willing to meet with one or many of them.
Chretien also said that if the provinces can get their act together, Ottawa will be willing to compromise on some key issues.
In terms of the Bill of Rights, we say that, you know, yes, we'll accept some discussion and some improvement and some changes that make some sense. But the Canadians want a Bill of Rights. 85% of the Canadians would like to have a Bill of Rights entrenched in the Constitution.
Left up to the woman of the family to make sure that the house was clean. But now 60% of Canadian women work outside the home, and so house cleaning services in Metro are booming. Who are your customers? At the nouveau riche or the working class?
Neither, really. It's pretty well what we describe as young professionals, the younger married couples in the newer neighborhoods, not necessarily people that have traditionally had housekeepers before.
The idea behind Mini-Maid is very simple. 4 workers are sent to a home. Each one has a specific job to do. One does the bathroom, another does the cleaning, and the other 2 clean the kitchen and do the dusting. They stay until the job is done. The cost? $33.50. But maybe you need someone to paint your home or an able-bodied to get the garden in shape. Now you can call Rent a Wife.
We'll do heavy cleaning and we do general house cleaning. We do it on an occasional basis or on a regular basis, or one shot only. We'll do a spring clean. For instance, we'll do some gardening. I have a calligrapher who does personal letterhead for people, and we do custom invitations. I do a little artwork myself.
Judah's team of 20 will do almost all the things that a housebound wife would do if she had the time. 26-year-old Paul Hackey has found success as a houseboy. Not only does Paul clean the house, make lunch, and entertain the kids, he's also a part-time secretary.
I put an ad in the Globe and Mail, and the phone started ringing, and I set up a business. I interviewed people, and they talked to me. I saw what they wanted to do, wanted me to do, and I would tell them what I thought I'd like to do. And the next thing there I was.
And these businesses will get even bigger as more and more Canadian women join the workforce and hire others to do the work that was traditionally theirs.
Six people died in a fire on Saturday at the Inn on the Park Hotel, and tight-lipped officials are keeping the details of what happened under wraps. City Pulse's Kevin Evans today discovered that there are a lot of questions that still need a lot of answers.
Firefighters on the scene described the blaze as a small working fire, which was under control in 30 minutes. Today, the tower section of the sprawling Inn in the Park luxury hotel complex still bearing the scars of that night of terror. The haunting question that remains unanswered is how could a so-called small working fire confined to a second-floor meeting room leave 6 people dead and send 65 others to hospital? Part of the answer seems to lie in the instructions given the guests on Friday night by the hotel staff.
A number of people have been evacuated. A number of people are doing okay within their rooms as long as they've stayed within their rooms. Some of the people that have had problems is because they've gone into the halls.
With the exception of one man found in his room, bodies of the other 5 who died were discovered in stairwells where they had been overcome by smoke funneling upwards through stairwells and burnt-out elevator shafts. Officials believe they might still be alive had they stayed put. Why did they leave?
They were told not to worry and to stay in their room. That is the procedure in the case of a fire. Guests should not leave the room until advised to do so.
Several guests, however, reported receiving opposite instructions.
Somebody called us from the switchboard and said, make your way to the stairwell. I said, lady, we can't even breathe. Where's the exit? Oh, well, one of those. I thought, lady, and so I hung up and got back to the window. I figured my only chance with my wife and I was to keep breathing.
Others, like Mike Burns of Buffalo, didn't wait for a phone call.
We woke up, we heard the alarm going off, and we tried to get downstairs, and we couldn't. We went up on the roof, and were trapped on the roof.
About 30 guests, including 3 infants, also headed for the roof, where they waited for an hour and a half in sub-zero temperatures before firemen with oxygen equipment led them down the stairwell to safety. Joe and Barbara Raitt of Buffalo said that when they smelled the smoke at 2:30, they tried to contact the hotel switchboard, which was being manned by 2 operators, but received no answer.
And it was very disturbing that at 2:30 this happened, and it was 3:25 before anybody from the main office called to advise us there was a fire in the building. I was so darn disturbed that it's just unbelievable that it would take nearly an hour. It was just very badly handled.
I'm very pleased with the way the staff have handled it. I think they've done a fine job under the circumstances.
Many of the guests who stayed in their rooms smashed windows for air and received instructions from the ground.
Just stay where you are. The firemen will be there in a couple minutes. Just stay calm. When they get to you, please follow their instructions and we'll have you out very soon. Just stay calm.
It took firemen and police 90 minutes to check all 23 floors and assist guests to safety. The smoke was too much for 30-year-old Metro Constable Bruce Brown, who was one of 7 still in hospital as a result of the blaze. All are in good condition. The dead have been identified as 37-year-old Carol Charles, her 7-year-old daughter Candace, and her daughter's 10-year-old friend Trish Biga, all of Virgil, Ontario. TV producer Cecil True, 42, of Halifax. 25-year-old Jamie Medina, a businessman from Columbia. And Albert Thompson, 70, of Bancroft, Ontario. Dr. Ross Bennett, the province's deputy chief coroner, announced at an Inn on the Park press conference this afternoon that an inquest will begin April 6th. A team of 14 police and 8 fire marshal investigators have yet to determine the cause of the fire. As for arson,
I wouldn't say it's been ruled out, but it's been considered, and there's no evidence at this time to suggest there was arson.
The cause is only one of several questions that remain unanswered. Among them, did the tower have a sprinkler system? What other fire prevention equipment did it have? And again, did hotel staff give contradictory instructions? It appears we'll have to wait for a coroner's inquest for the answers to those questions, as most officials around here today are responding to queries with a simple no comment. Could a fire like this happen in other Metro hotels? Mark Daly takes a look at just that.
After 8 years of debate, it would appear that we will get Stoll service someday, but as Kevin Evans warns, the fight is far from over. Here's Kevin.
The 4-hour meeting was predictably stormy, with one anti-Stoll spectator dragged kicking and screaming from the council chamber. For Stoll proponent Art Eggelton, it was a crucial test of political credibility. In danger of losing the vote, the mayor altered his Stoll proposal just enough to attract sufficient support.
14-9, that carries.
The mayor's watered-down proposal states council is not unalterably opposed to a limited Stoll service, subject to safeguards regarding noise levels, no jets at the airport, and no runway extension. Also in the proposal, and this is key, the agreement with Ottawa on those safeguards must be approved by council before Stoll goes ahead. That prompted one alderman who reversed her previous anti-Stoll position to say,
"We are not really making this decision tonight."
Even the mayor admitted the Stoll battle isn't over.
Mr. Mayor, do we consider this to be a victory tonight?
Well, we're moving the thing along. We're proceeding with caution. It's an orange light kind of agreement that council has come to, and it's a consensus move.
Has the city taken a firm stand on Stoll? It seems to be still sitting on the fence.
We have come off the position that we were on previously of being opposed to it, and are now moving towards the stage of getting reports.
But what precisely is the position now? If we're not opposed to it, but neither are we for it. Where are we?
The position is, in fact, we're saying we're not unalterably opposed. We want to look at these guarantees. We want to get reports from our solicitor, from our Planning and Development Commissioner on the various guarantees that are required and that I have stated we should have, and so they'll be coming. They'll be forthcoming. We're proceeding with caution. We're moving off the position of being opposed to it. It'll be back here again.
Though touted as approval in principle for Stoll, opponents are not conceding.
I can't consider it a defeat. I guess the fight's going to have to go on.
And so there will be at least one more battle before commercial passenger aircraft fly out of this airport to Montreal and Ottawa. However, the significance of Council's backing off its long-standing opposition to Stoll should not be overlooked. And today, opponents to Stoll are grudgingly admitting that the writing is on the wall. Kevin Evans, City Pulse.
Open your ears and listen to what this game you call politics is doing to us, the students. Patience is your answer. It's easy to speak of patience with your education completed and your career established. What about us and our future?
The students are demanding a new school because they are now housed in portables, and the accommodation is, to say the least, basic.
The situation that you're facing at Don Bosco is simply a disgrace to the educational system of Ontario. There is a temporary building which looks something like a construction trailer, and that's the good building in the school. Then you go out the back of that, down some very icy stairs and some very cold and wet weather, into a valley where 28 huts are strung together. You can imagine how shocked I was to find there was no water supply. And so that in the art room, there you have to bring in buckets of water, and the buckets become filthy after a few people have used them.
The school cannot get Department of Education approval for funds for a new school, while there are empty spaces in other Etobicoke schools.
Immediately after the demonstration, some Bosco parents and school officials went off to meet with some of Premier Davis's staff. They were to discuss a possible government solution to the problem of this temporary school. It's to take over a nearby empty elementary school and work out a funding formula so that that elementary school can be converted into a high school. While that was happening, the Premier himself was on his way also to meet a high school audience, but this time it would be tame students.
The audience at Arundel High School in Mississauga was well behaved, laughing politely at the right time at the Premier's best off-the-cuff cracks. The question and answers were routine on the drinking age, acid rain, and U.S. economic policies. But with the snowstorm shaping up outside, how does Davis now feel about a winter campaign? Hey, Bill, don't you wish you'd now called it about a month later?
Oh, it's snowing out. Colin, but I tell you, the weather cannot alter the warmth of the reception at Arundel Secondary School.
And by those young people.
That's right.
And as he left to board his bus, a comment by two students watching outside. And I quote, "Davis will win. Who'd vote for those other two turkeys?" End of quote. Voter apathy could well be Davis's biggest problem. Colin Vaughan, Davis Campaign, City Pulse.
On Friday, several thousand demonstrators protested against police raids on 4 downtown clubs. Today, angry words and bitter feelings remain.
Friday night's demonstration came only 24 hours after the raids. The crowd grew quickly, enough to shut off traffic at Yonge and Wellesley. A makeshift PA system let several speakers, including one of the found-ins, talk about the experience and the new round of troubled relations with the police. Others in the crowd minced no words, and the comparison of the raids to Nazi Germany was popular. But the crowd did not just go home after the cheerleading session at Yonge and Wellesley. They marched a few miles to 52 Division, the downtown police station on Dundas near University. There were a few small skirmishes en route, and police took no chances with nearly 200 uniformed officers circling the building. And from there they marched to Queen's Park, symbol of their lost battle for homosexual rights so far. Police had problems with the surging demonstrators there. Organizers tried to break things up, but large enough groups moseyed back to Yonge Street, and as anti-gays and drunks of all persuasions mixed into the crowd about 2 a.m., there was a little trouble, a few arrests, some minor bruises, and finally, some kind of calm.
I was a little surprised because I think the members of the homosexual community, in all probability, know that the types of charges we're laying, and I can understand their concerns about the found-ins names being printed or given out by this force. We have instructions to Staff Inspector Banks have been that they were not to give those names out, and I hope that the members of the media don't make a concerted effort to get the names of the found-ins.
Law student Peter Maloney, a gay activist who fought hard for budget disclosures from the police, particularly the Intelligence Bureau, thinks the officers who raided the baths might be afraid of him. He says some of his mail has been misdirected recently, and a postal employee told him that his supervisor was collecting Maloney's mail for somebody else. The RCMP says it isn't them.
On January the 5th, I was over sitting having lunch in a restaurant which is below the business office of the Club Baths of Toronto. And someone came down and said, there's some mail upstairs for you. And I said, well, who's writing to me here? And they said, oh, it's not addressed to you here. It's mail for your home address. And I said, it's all addressed to my proper home address? And they said, yes. Well, I said, how did you come to get my mail? And they said, well, the mailman came this morning with a bag full of mail for the various businesses in that office and said that they'd been too busy to sort the mail, and they just delivered it all in a bag, and the 3 envelopes were in there. So either somebody was clumsy or stupid in not resorting, or they were too busy, or this postal clerk was once again trying to signal me that my mail was still under surveillance.
There will be a gay rights strategy session here at the Church Street Community Center tomorrow night. There might also be an announcement at that meeting of a provincial gay candidate in the riding of St. George. There's also going to be some activity at the Police Commission meeting later this week. This issue is far from being a dead one. Mark Daly on Church Street, City Pulse.
It's an issue that has hit Toronto square on the conscience, and finally the mayor broke his silence to talk to the press about last Thursday's raids on 4 downtown clubs. Are you planning a separate investigation once you've found out that indeed some people suffered both verbal abuse and, in effect, some physical abuse?
I'm waiting till I hear from Chief Ackroyd about the matter. He is looking into those allegations.
Eggelton told us he sees Toronto on 2 fronts. Firstly, as a city where everyone is welcome and feels comfortable. And secondly, as a city of law and order. What happens now after this kind of raid and your association with the gay community?
I expressed, as I have in past, that nobody should be discriminated against in our society in Toronto, that everybody's human rights should be in fact respected, but there should be privileges or no special rights for any particular group. That's what I said during the campaign. I stand by that.
When asked if he was satisfied with the police's conduct on the raids, Eggelton said that was a matter for the courts to decide. He did say, however, that he was assured by Police Chief Ackroyd that there was good reason to raid the 4 establishments. Mayor Eggelton said more than once here at this press conference the bawdy houses, whether they're heterosexual or homosexual, are illegal under the criminal code. No one questions that. What people do question is how the raids were carried out and the manner in which they were undertaken. Barbara Laskin at City Hall for City Pulse.